Hi, everyone. These are the 5 steps for success in a repair business or restoration business, if you like. These are the steps that I've used, and they work very, very well for me. And for you, of course, your mileage may vary depending on the way that you apply these steps. So keep in mind, if you use these steps, you're doing so at your own risk. But I will share my recipe for success with you here. Let's get started. The very first thing is acceptance. And when I say acceptance, are you going to accept the device to repair, or are you going to pass on it? And there are many factors that play into this. So I'll just grab something off the side here. This could be a brand new television. It could be a stereo system, power supply, car amplifier, anything. The formula is pretty much the same, okay? So I've got this clock radio off to the side here. So it'll be a neat little restoration in the future. Anyways. So here is the very first thing that you want to be thinking about. So this is how it's going to play out. The person comes to your desk and puts this down in front of you and says, "Can you repair this?" The first things that you want to look for are, did the person slam that thing down on the desk in front of you? Are they cussing and swearing when they did that? Are they a very, very nice person? Did they put it down and ask you very politely, "Can you please repair this for me?" One of the hardest things to do when you're a nice person and when you've been doing this for a long time is the ability to say no. Now, no is a very beneficial thing sometimes. It'll keep you out of a lot of grief. If the person slammed this thing down on the desk in front of you and they're cussing and swearing, and if they were doing this to me, immediately it's like, "Sorry, I don't have the time. You'll have to have somebody else repair this, or say, "Sorry, I'll pass on this." Something, okay? I won't take it on, because you got to always keep in mind, if they are coming to see you like this, you don't even know who this person is, and they're slamming it down and they're cussing and swearing. The thing that always has to be remembered is this is a man-made device, and just say you repair this thing to the best of your ability and you replace almost every part in this thing, for example, okay? It is a man-made device, and the parts are man-made, and there's a good chance that maybe something else will fail in there. Something unforeseen will fail. That person that slammed that thing down on your desk and is cussing and swearing might be coming back for a warranty fix in 1 week, and you'll have to deal with that same person. So it really comes to that point. I've found throughout my own experience, and of course this is just depends on your own personality and how you want to deal with this, but through my own experience, when people come in like that, it's like, "Sorry, you'll have to take your device somewhere else." That's how it is, okay? If they put the thing down very nicely, he or she puts it down very nicely, and and they say, "Can you repair this for me, please?" At that point, all of that's overlooked. And of course, now you're starting to look at different things, okay? Another thing to keep in mind, and there's a lot of things to keep in mind is the word for the day, is that you can't give this thing value. That's not up to you to do. In this case, all right, you might look at this thing and think to yourself, "That's only worth $25 or something like that, right?" And that's going through your head. Of course, that's just natural for you to do. But the person that brought it in, this may have been a gift from their grandmother, maybe their dad or mom that has passed away or something like that. It may have been a gift. And the value of this device could be astronomical to them. So that's something that you will get into down the road in the other parts here. At this point, is just the point, it's almost within you. You're just looking at this and you're kind of saying to yourself, "Am I going to deal with this person?" You're looking at the device. Am I going to accept this? And this plays really into the next part. All of the parts that I'm talking to you about today all kind of do this, all right? And when I'm moving forward in these parts, you'll see how, maybe part 2 will play into part 1, or part 3 will play into part 2, and things like that, okay? You'll find out how they all just kind of mesh together, because everything has to work together, just like the repair. Everything has to mesh in order to make this work. You, I guess you could say, have to be able to work with your customer as well. You really need to be able to, if you do really good repairs and you make sure everything is good and you have a good customer, a lot of the times you'll develop a very good relationship with your customer and you'll get a lot of repeat business that way. Then again, I'll talk more about that as we go along. One thing I'd like to mention is a lot of people seem to think that the repair industry is a dying industry. Well, in the consumer industry, depending on what you do, it's definitely not what it used to be. But in the industrial industry, so you're dealing with commercial products, it's the repair industry is more alive than ever. Okay, so say you're working on a CNC machine power supply or something like that. That industry is very, very alive. Okay, or if you're working on anything to do with any type of an industrial machine, it is. To give you an example, okay, a person comes in with a television and they put it down in front of you, okay? It's not the end of the world if they go home that night and they can't watch their television. If somebody from an industrial place brings you a power supply from a CNC machine that's down, that's costing them $30,000 a day, they're not going to bat an eye to paying $1,000 to get that power supply fixed. Okay, so that's a different story when you're dealing with the industrial world. And when I say $1,000 to fix a power supply, there's a lot of stuff involved, and a lot of the times, there's just piles of capacitors and time involved with that. That's a different story. I'll talk about consumer electronics and industrial electronics in a different video, and the differences in repair. But the electronics repair industry is still very, very well alive, and there's a lot of opportunity in that right now. And depending on what you specialize in, you can very easily and very quickly get well known for what you do if you're good at what you do. And that's my job, is to help you be the best that you can be at what you do. Okay, so let's take a look at part 2, and I'll talk about the second part to success in repair. Now that you've made the decision within yourself that you are going to take on this repair, based upon what we talked about in part 1, which was the acceptance phase. So basically, the customer is going to be okay to deal with, and the device looks like it is repairable. Now, you're still a long ways from repairing this thing for the customer, because there are a lot of factors that have to be worked out between you and the customer at this point, and that's where part 2 comes in, which is right now, the estimate phase. So, in the estimate phase, I'll give you a few examples here of what you're going to run into. Somebody drops this thing on the bench in front of you, or puts it down very nicely, depending on the customer, and they say, how much is this going to cost? What are you going to tell them? How are you going to take on that decision? Well, first of all, are you going to go, that'll be $70? Or are you going to tell them, I'm going to need to open this thing up and take a look inside before I can give you any price? Well, here's an example. So you quote the fella, or he or she, $70, okay? And you open the thing up after they've left the store, and it's missing all the tubes, and somebody's harvested an IF transformer out of it. What are you going to be doing at that point? You're going to be going, oh no, what did I just do? There are no free estimates. You cannot have something on your bench without putting bench time into it to know exactly what's wrong with it, unless it's a routine complete parts swap out, and you know exactly what's wrong with it already, and there's a flat rate. There's absolutely no way. For example, somebody drops a Kenwood amplifier off on your bench and they say it just doesn't work. That could be a fuse, or that could be 10 burnt out output devices, 10 drivers, and maybe 10 resistors. The cost difference between the two and the availability between the two is astronomical. Okay, you were talking, a $2 fuse versus maybe $100 in output devices. And it doesn't even end there. That's not it. Can you get those output devices? Because a lot of these semiconductors are getting hard to find right now. This all plays out into the final phone call when you're going to be talking to the customer. So there can be no free estimates. You have to put in bench time in order to know what you're up against. And the customer has to respect the fact that you need to put that bench time in. They can't expect you to spend an hour on this thing for free. So you're going to have to charge the customer an estimate fee right up front. They can't leave your place without paying that estimate fee, because if you say, okay, pay me the estimate fee, whatever, later on, just say you call them up and say, yeah, it's going to cost you $200 to fix this. They're going to say, oh, I'm not going to pay that to fix this. And a lot of the times they'll ditch the device with you. So you lose out on the estimate fee and you have to get rid of their old device. If they pay you the estimate fee up front, there's a much bigger chance that they're going to go through with the repair, especially if you tell them that you'll take it off the top of the repair. Okay? They need to understand that if they don't get the device repaired, you are keeping that estimate fee because that's your bench time. You've put an hour of time into it diagnosing the problem. You may want to consider getting them to sign a piece of paper regarding the estimate if that happens, right? So that might be a standard routine thing that you might have to have happen. So you have them sign something. I understand. I'm not telling you how to write this, okay, in any way, shape, or form, but something to the effect that they do understand that whether they get the device repaired or whether they don't get the device repaired or whether the device is simply not repairable due to, parts that are unavailable now, you are going to keep that estimate fee because that is your bench time. Sometimes it'll take an hour. Sometimes it'll take more than an hour to give a person an estimate on, say, a modern amplifier. Another thing that you're going to do while you're doing this estimate is as you're testing parts and you're finding that they're dead, you're going to actually take a piece of paper and you're going to write all of this down and you're going to put that in the amplifier. And if you say get to repair this thing, say they go for it, this is obviously going to be in queue, right? Because you're fixing other things. So all of your troubleshooting that you've done now is recorded on a piece of paper. So say in a week, when it comes to the bench time for that device, you're already halfway there. So you don't have to repeat all your steps again and find everything all over again. So you want to take notes while you're actually doing that. You got to be very careful with the notes that you take. You don't want to give those notes to the customer because a lot of the times if you give those notes to the customer, they'll try to repair the device themselves. They'll use your information to repair it themselves, or they'll hand that to another repairman down the road and have them fix your device. So you just want to give them a vague idea of what's wrong. After the device is repaired, of course, then it's absolutely fine to give them a complete rundown of everything that's been replaced and everything on there. But you don't want to give them too much information at that point of estimate, especially if they've paid you the estimate and they want to take it back. They need to understand that money paid is simply for your bench time. That's all it's for. And if they want the device back and it's not repaired, they'll get a vague idea of what's actually wrong. You're not troubleshooting and working out all of the problems for a menial estimate fee of, say, I'll just give you an example, okay? I'm not saying use this amount. I'm just giving you an example, okay? So say between $35 and $50, all right? They're not getting your intellectual property and all the intellect and all of the knowledge that you have testing things out for that amount of money, okay? Something else that they need to understand. So there's a lot of things that have to come into play when you're dealing with customers. And yeah, again, I can't stress that enough. You need to get paid for that estimate before they walk out of the shop. Very important. They can't pay for that estimate later because you won't get that estimate later unless, they're a very good customer, repeat customer, or they, actually go for the repair. If the thing is unrepairable, good luck in getting that estimate fee. Okay, so your bench time at that point would be completely wasted and you got ripped off at that point. So you got to look after yourself with that. So now that we've gotten through this phase and you're at the point to where you can say, okay, I know exactly what this is going to cost. Now you call up the customer and you tell the customer maybe an hour or two later, however long it takes you to quickly troubleshoot this or call them the next day, whatever. You call them up and you say, okay, this is going to be the cost. And at that point, you say, okay, say it's going to cost them $150 to fix the device. And you'll take the estimate fee off the top. They're going to be happy about that and they'll be like, okay, I'll go for that, or they'll say pass on it. So at that point you can figure out whether you're going to go for it, and then you fix the device, and then of course when it's fixed they come and pay the final amount. A lot of people will say at that point, they'll say at the estimate fee point, depending on I guess your business motto, they'll say, okay, so now that estimate fee is paid, before I go and purchase all the components for this to replace everything in here, I want to be paid completely out before I buy all of these other components to repair your final amplifier, or to repair the amplifier, finally. So that's another thing to keep in mind, depending on how you want to do that. Some people will make their customer come back and completely pay it out. Again, if you're buying a lot of money in parts, a lot of the customers will understand that. And if it's something they really like, they will. Whether you want to take that on and take the risk at that point and say, yeah, okay, I'll purchase the components and put all those components in and then just wait for the customer to pay it off at that point, is completely up to you. If you do get prepayment on the repair, there's a much higher chance that the customer is going to come and pick the thing up. In fact, it's almost 100% they're going to come and pick the thing up because they've completely paid for it. There's a big difference between $200 and say a $35 estimate fee. Okay, so these are all things that you need to continually keep in mind when you're doing this stuff. If you need to write this stuff down on a piece of paper so that you can use this in the future, so that you can remember all of these little facts, that might be something that you want to do, is just know, okay, so I need to phone him up, and I should have him come in and prepay for this. And they need to know that the estimate fee is mine, whether they repair it or not. All of these things, you might want to write all this stuff down and just study that kind of stuff. Again, I'm using my own personal motto to give you an idea on how to become successful. Whether you use these tips and this knowledge is completely up to you. And again, you're doing so at your own risk. So just keep this in mind. Again, it all depends on the application as well. We're now through the estimate phase. You've talked to the customer on the phone, and the customer is giving you the green light to go ahead and repair the device for the price, the final price that you've quoted them. So you've worked all this out with your estimate and everything like that. Everything's good. Congratulations. You've got the repair. Now comes the commitment phase. Now that you've committed to this, you need to get this job done no matter what. You've told the customer that you're going to repair this, and you're going to repair this. So many repair places will take on a repair, they'll get the estimate fee, and the thing will sit on the shelf for long periods of time. And they'll keep saying, other customers, or what they do is they cherry pick the repairs, the higher price repairs, and they'll put them in and they keep pushing other repairs off. You can't do that. If this thing is number 5 in line, it stays number 5 in line because you've committed to this. No matter whether that device there is worth $1,000 to repair and this one's worth $50 to repair, you've committed to this and you're going to stick to this. It's very important. That will play a huge role in your reputation. Commitment, very, very important. Stick with the device, put it in queue, and keep that queue in order. Now that you've committed to repairing the device, the next very important thing to keep in check is your time frame. If you've told a person that it's going to be 3 weeks to get the thing fixed, you want to keep it as close to 3 weeks as possible. Now, if they're expecting 3 weeks, sometimes it'll take them that amount of time to get their funds into order in order to get the, to pay the final price if you haven't taken prepayment for it, things like that. So sometimes if you say 3 weeks, they want it at 3 weeks, and sometimes they're comfortable earlier, but people are usually never comfortable if you're late. So say you've quoted them 3 weeks to do this, and it's going to take you a month and a half or something like that. That's going to affect your reputation. That usually creates angry customers. So you always want to stick within the time frame that was discussed and that you and the customer understood clearly. The repair is now complete. You've bench tested the device for a set period of time and it works flawlessly. You're at the point to where you're ready to call the customer and tell him that he can come get his device, whatever it may be, radio, television, stereo, whatever. You are now at the completion stage of the repair. It goes a long way with the customer when they come to pick up the device to do just a couple of things before they come and get it. So put something around the cord so the cord isn't hanging down to the ground when they come and pick it up. Just bind the cord up like this and put an elastic band around it, or something similar like that, a tie strap. Just something so that this isn't hanging. If the device they brought in for repair was a little bit dusty and dirty, wipe the dust and dirt off. If you can, use a mild cleaner. Of course, test it in an inconspicuous area. Be careful with cleaners. But if you can, clean the case up just a little bit. When they come to pick up the device, that's their first impression when they come to get it. It's like, wow, it looks brand new. If you can achieve that right there, you're already shining before they've even plugged the thing in and trying it out. So just a couple of little things. There's, a few more things that you can do that, to make sure that things are just perfect. Make sure that the volume is turned down. So when they bring it home, if they forget that it's not cranked right up, make sure the power switch is off. If you've moved a bunch of the controls around, a lot of the times people have their bass and treble and mid and all that kind of stuff set all in different areas. If you can, when you get the device in, snap the picture of the face of the unit and just return all the knobs to the same places they were. And when you hand it back to them, everything is exactly the same. All these little things, they all mean a lot to the customer. It might not mean a whole lot to you because you're buzzing through the repairs, but these little things mean a lot to them, especially equalizers. If you're working in the music industry and you get a big equalizer in for repair and it's got all sorts of different, slidable VRs on them, before you hand the thing back or before you even start repairing it, it's always a really good idea to snap a picture of that. I've mentioned that before. And then that way, if you're moving things around, you can look at your picture, make sure it's a good high-res picture, and put everything exactly back to the way it was on the equalizer. Things like that. Those little things will make you shine. Those are the things that just that little bit of extra work really goes a long way with your customers. So I hope this information helped you out. If you find this information useful, you can let me know by tapping the heart symbol below or just leave me a comment. I'll talk to all of you very soon. Bye for now.